Guys, welcome back to another video, the first of the international break, and this is the territory where we start talking about things that are on our mind. And I had to make this video today because yesterday I did a very innocuous tweet. Now, if you know me, if you've been watching me for years on these videos, if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, you know I am not an egregious person. I am not one for baiting. But yesterday I did a very, very innocuous tweet when I said, quite simply, going to be interesting to see how Pep gets Foden back in the side, isn't it? There's a real natural balance at the moment. I don't know how he's going to do it. That was genuinely me just going, I wonder what he's going to play Phil when he gets back. That was literally me saying that. As you can see by the quote tweets and the replies and all that kind of stuff, it kicked off. I got an awful lot of hate yesterday. Me of all people being accused of a Foden agenda. Me of all people. Now, once again, if you know who I am, you know anything about me, I have been watching Phil Foden since he was 14 years old, play for Manchester City Academy. Phil literally knows me. Phil and me follow each other on Twitter. We've chatted in person. He's come up to me at Man City staff parties, given me a hug and called me a legend. This is not a humble brag. This is just true. I love Phil. Phil even hugged my wife when she was pregnant and congratulated her at that very same party. So I am never, ever going to bait around Phil Foden because I love him. The question was sincere. It was sincere. And I got a lot of criticism for it, but it was a sincere question. And I do think it's an interesting discussion to have. So that's what I'm going to do today. The idea of this video is to talk about how Phil Foden and Rodri return to the starting 11 because there are potential connotations to how Manchester City play. And I feel like it's a good talking point for people interested in football, interested in tactics, and who don't want to get too bogged down in the minutiae of who should definitely play and who should definitely not play because of arguments on Twitter about Saka and Foden, who's best and all that childish stuff. This is a video discussing the potential ramifications of the tactical changes because I'm really interested in that stuff because I'm a football fan. So I wanted to talk about it. Now, the way I'm going to do it is look at how Manchester City are currently playing and what makes that Manchester City side work. Then talk about the return of these players and how it potentially affects that and if that's a problem. I don't think it is. I think both are going to walk into the lineup. That's my honest opinion. I think they'll get into the lineup, but I do think it's going to mean we change what we currently like. You can't have your cake and eat it all the time. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So the current lineup for Manchester City, as of the weekend, was this. I'll bring it up for you. This was the weekend's lineup. I've already put Rico pushing forward. We know he plays at right back down here, but I put him there for now because that's where he's playing. And of course, we had Jack Grealish on the left. We had Doku on the right. Then we had Bernardo, KDB, Kovacic. It's basically been that all season, other than maybe occasionally it's been this, Jack or Doku, and this has been Doku or Savio. So it's been that basically. That is how Manchester City played this season. There's been no real changes to that formation. And what we've all enjoyed so far, I would argue, is the vibrancy and the chemistry of this team. It's been really good. Now, why has the team felt particularly exciting? It's not entirely down to them all being fit. It's down entirely to the system. Like, it's down entirely to the energy of the team and how it works. What makes Manchester City so exciting right now, in my opinion, is that they've got people who can carry the ball far. We've got dribblers. We've got Doku, Savio playing out wide. We've got Rico Lewis, who's very good at give and goes, at getting forward, pushing forward. And we've got the energy and the skill of Bernardo and Kovacic in midfield. Bernardo in particular is a pressing machine in the middle. When you bring to the table fit and firing KDB, Haaland finding space in the channels again with Doku and Savio, particularly out wide, causing a lot of trouble. You can potentially see why Manchester City feel different right now, because it is different. Savinho in particular brought an awful lot of ability to carry the ball 30-40 yards up the pitch, and that pace and that energy. Look, last season, our right-hand side was Kyle Walker and Bernardo Silva. Kyle, I love him, but he's not good at going forward. And I think it's fair to say Bernardo isn't as tricky or traditional winger in the way that Savinho or Doku is. So they play differently, basically. Bernardo out wide plays differently. So the right-hand side is so much more dynamic this season with Rico Lewis and Doku or Savinho out wide. So basically, if you bring Rodri and Phil back into this team, it's going to change. Probably for the better, but it's definitely going to change dynamically. So this is the point I'm making when I tweeted that yesterday. Wonder what Pep's going to do, because there's a good chance, in my opinion, Pep enjoys what he's seeing right now. I think he does. That's not to say they won't walk back in, but I do think Pep enjoys what he's seeing, and I do. And I know you guys do. I've tweeted a billion times that I feel like the football right now is really exciting. It's really vibrant, really dynamic, and that comes from players in square pegs in square holes, players doing what they do best. So you can't just immediately change everything and expect it to be exactly the same. I'm not saying we won't, but you have to accept that there are pluses and negatives from both. Now, Rodri, let's talk about Rodri immediately. Rodri walks back into the side. I'm sorry for Kovacic, but he does. We do it. He does simply because he's the best number 6 in the world. Kovacic has been absolutely brilliant, and you could argue that Kovacic brings a certain level of ball carrying ability that makes his Manchester City side particularly useful. We've seen so far Kovacic be an absolute threat going forward, getting the ball on the edge of his own area, darting past 2 or 3 people, carrying it up the pitch, and even scoring a great goal against Chelsea. Now, that's not to say he usurps Rodri, but it's a very different approach, and we can't deny that it's really effective. I still sadly think the writing's on the wall for Kovacic in this scenario. Rodri will walk back into the team because Rodri is hands down the best number 6 in world football. He'll come back in, but it does change how we play them. I wouldn't be surprised if Rodri's a little bit deeper there. Do we see Rodri this season play less as a quasi 8? We saw Rodri get up here quite a lot last season, and I do wonder if the return of Gundogan affects this a little bit. So if you bring Rodri in, I wonder if this affects Bernardo. Does it mean Gundogan plays here because you want someone who can do what Rodri did last season in these sort of half spaces around here where Rodri was getting forward? Gundo, I think, actually comes back into the team if Rodri comes back into the team, because I think Guardiola would be tempted with that Gundo, Rodri, treble season sort of partnership. I think he will be. It's going to be easy to see how Rodri gets back into the team. But for Phil, I think it's going to be difficult. And Phil is brilliant, but I do honestly think Pep's got a sort of... Look, it's not going to be difficult because Phil gets in the team, but I don't think it's going to be clear-cut. I really don't think it's going to be he just walks back into the team. Now, I asked yesterday, that tweet, what people reckon, and I got a lot of different responses. The most common response was that he should probably play on the right, but one that people felt quite strongly was that he should play central. So, if you put Phil central here, you know, with KDB, immediately I think it starts to get very crowded. Because unlike Bernardo, who's happy to be down here where Foden currently is here, Foden wants to be there. And KDB wants to be there. And Rico wants to get forward. It's a very different dynamic. I love Foden. Honestly, no one's wanted Foden to do better than City than I have probably online for a long time. Not the only person, but I'm in the top 1%, I would say, of Foden supporters. But Foden is definitely not Bernardo Silva as an 8. Would anyone agree with that? Like, I think Foden's brilliant, but I think people play down what Bernardo Silva brings to the team in terms of balance, and I think Guardiola is aware of that. Foden is a classic 10, but he's not yet, in my opinion, got the maturity. He might be this season that he does it, but I've not seen yet that he's comfortable down here alongside Rodri, and that is what Guardiola expects if KDB's on the pitch, because KDB isn't going to be down here. KDB now with his aching eggs is going to be down here, up here at the top. So Foden's got to do this Bernardo Silva stuff down here. And I do wonder if Guardiola thinks, look, Bernardo is potentially more balanced in this role. And I would argue as a number 8, Bernardo is more or less untouchable in world football. He's elite level Bernardo Silva as an 8. He's up there with people like Valverde and so on. He's an absolute world-class box-to-box midfielder. Bernardo Silva, I'm going to put him back in the team there. Bernardo, like when he's out here, he's a really good right winger. He's an excellent right winger. He's not an elite, I wouldn't say he's a world-class right winger, but when he's here, Bernardo Silva, he's brilliant because Bernardo is at his best when he's scurrying around down here, tracking back and getting the ball off defenders and scurrying over there and scurrying over here and just disrupting play and winning the ball high up the pitch to give to Haaland. Bernardo is at his best when he's just given that number 8 role. Cast your mind back to Bernardo's best ever game, in my humble opinion, which was 2019, which is a long time ago now, but he's still capable of doing it, against Liverpool, 2-1 at the Etihad, when Bernardo played alongside Fernandinho, and he was absolutely immense. The energy, the drive, the determination, he was untouchable that day. He absolutely was. And I think that's where Bernardo's still at his best. And I really do believe a big part of City's start to the season so far has been Bernardo central. It has been. But that doesn't mean he's untouchable. It doesn't mean he's untouchable. It could be that Guardiola does look at the brilliance of the PFA Player of the Year, Phil Foden, and decide he has to get into the team. So who gives way? Rodri is a lock here. Rodri's a lock in the middle. We know that. So does Foden come into the team? Does that mean Rico drops a little bit deeper in midfield? Because Rico can do a more than able Bernardo Silva impression. I do wonder if Foden's on the pitch as a false 8, so to speak, too. You've got essentially 2 number 10s there. Does Rico resist his urge to get up here and overlap and stay a little bit deeper alongside Rodri? I wouldn't be surprised to see that, because Rico can do a more than passing Bernardo Silva impression, and I would be curious to see it. Now, someone in the chat is saying... about Foden it being a negative that he's failed to get in the centre of the pitch. I would say that was true if Manchester City weren't blessed with probably the greatest midfielders of all time in the Premier League history. Like, you could talk about Foden's development, but he's had to get ahead of Kevin De Bruyne, in my opinion, the greatest playmaker, the greatest chance creator this league's ever seen. David Silva, in my opinion, the greatest controller this Premier League has ever seen, and Gundogan is probably the most balanced number 8 this league has ever seen. So you're talking about Phil Foden failing while also having to get ahead of genuine all-timers. Those three are literally statue-worthy level players, and now Gundogan is back in the team as well. I've not even mentioned Gundogan yet. So as much as Foden is here, how do we know that Guardiola doesn't want Gundogan there instead? He's going to want Gundo to play at some point. So if you've got Gundogan, you've got KDB on the pitch, does Phil go out wide? Do we have Foden out on the right again? And I've got a feeling that might be the solution here. Like, I've got a feeling we might see Rico playing more as a traditional right back, or Kyle Walker maybe comes back into the team. And I would not be surprised if we see something like this where Gundo's a little bit deeper, and Rodri and Gundogan take turns to go forward, where Rico overlaps Foden a tiny bit, and you get something more like this. Now, of course, you can add Ake to this at any point. I'm not hating on Ake. I can't be arsed. I think someone said to me yesterday on Twitter, "Why are you not talking about Rodri and Ake then?" I'm like, come on, man. Like, this whole whataboutism is childish. We all know the reason I was talking about Foden, because it's more complicated. Like, for Rodri, he walks back into the six because he's the best in the world. For whatever reason, Phil Foden hasn't nailed down a regular slot. So for Manchester City, he's been a left winger, he's been a right winger, he's been a false 9, been a number 10, but he's never had a nailed down slot. So it's a fair question to talk about where Phil's going to play. As for Ake, look, Ake, we know he rotates with Vardy, Diaz and Akanji. It's not complicated. He's never been a nailed on starter, and I don't think any of our defenders are nailed on starters either, and I like that. Like Vardy, Diaz, Akanji, Stones, Walker, Ake, whatever, they all know they're going to rotate, and that's the simple solution there. They're rotation players. Ake is not Rodri, and Ake is not Phil Foden. And I mean that with the greatest respect. He's not. He is a guy who understands his position. And Stones as well, but you know what I'm getting at there. So does Phil Foden play out wide and then move nominally central when Rico Lewis overlaps? Or does Kyle Walker go over here, And I think that's might be what happened. Now, that potentially is an option. What I would say is that gets you best players on the pitch, but the potential downside is that you do lose the vibrancy of what made City so exciting this season. Like, people were so excited about Oscar Bob's breakthrough and Savinho looking great, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, we've got superstars." But you can't have your cake and eat it. I mean, if Foden's playing out wide, those guys aren't going to play. And if you're fine with that, that's brilliant. I'm fine with it too. But we can't deny the effect that has on the team, There's absolutely going to be a change in how City play. And it will feel different. It won't feel quite as explosive. And if you're fine with that, that's absolutely fine too. There's a good chance maybe we have over this side, if Foden's playing inverted, we play one of Sav or Doku, so there's more dribblers. But I think it's fair to say Foden is a brilliant right winger cutting in, but I wouldn't argue he's a natural right winger. Would anyone agree with that? Like, when you talk about right wingers, like Foden isn't. I wouldn't say Foden is a world-class right winger. I think he's a world-class footballer, world-class number 10. But is he world-class right winger? I'm not convinced he is. He's an excellent Champions League level. But as a right winger, I don't think he's. It depends what you want from your right winger, I guess. He's world-class in any role, but I would say Savinho's more comfortable playing as a winger to beat people and get crosses in. That's not to say Phil can't do it. But I think Phil's at his very best when he's here. Getting the ball, cutting across, smacking it in the top corner, linking up with people. It's one of those things where you have to make compromises how you play. And look, the reason that I asked that question yesterday is because I really enjoy how City play right now. And be honest in the chat. Be honest, and I want to see what your opinion is in the chat right now. Are you enjoying how Manchester City play right now? Does it feel different to last season? It does. It does. And that's not to say I'm not fine with another way. I absolutely am. But we do change things. If Foden goes on the right, things change. Another potential solution is that maybe this man goes on the left over here. So what you could potentially see is that Foden goes on the left. I think Foden, if Foden goes on the left, what you're going to see is Kyle Walker, in my opinion, play on the right. Because I think you can't have two overlapping fullbacks to get forward. And I think we're going to see Vardial go a little bit further up the pitch. We're going to see probably Ake come into the team to cover that left channel. If Vardial's a bit further up, then we're probably going to see, I'll leave a Kanji there for now. It could be Diaz. And I think we're going to see Kyle Walker probably back in the team to cover down that side. So it changes how we play. And I think Phil will start on the left but drift in central. And then you think, well, where does Bernardo play in this? Obviously, they'll all rotate. So it's one of those things where I feel like where you play him, if you play him on the left over here, he's going to cut in and play more central because he's not a traditional left winger. And I don't think he's good as a left winger these days. I think his game's changed there. And it's weird because Phil is as good as he is. I feel like last season he was brilliant. Someone said benching Diaz. I'm not benching Diaz, mate. Come on, man. Does this make you feel better? There we go. Or Diaz. I can't put every player on the pitch, mate. The rotation players. There we go. It's funny how people get so bogged down in who's on the screen. It's obviously, come on, man. You get what I'm saying. It's just we're not arguing over everyone. We're talking about Rodri and Phil here. You put Stones there. Put whoever. I'm gonna put a centre back. You know what I mean? One of the centre backs. There we go. You know what I mean? I'm not arguing about a best 11 here. But B just said you drop Rico Lewis. So what I'm saying, if you've got Foden playing on the left and Vardial overlapping, you're not playing Rico Lewis here, are you? Because otherwise, what do you get? You get two defenders here. So if Foden's on the left, Rico ain't playing. I'm sorry, he isn't. Because Vardial's going to overlap Phil Foden. Unless you want Phil Foden stuck out here and just holding the width. Do you guys really want Phil Foden holding the width? I don't. I don't personally want that. I think that would be a real shame, don't you? Because I don't think there's anything in that, and I think we lose a lot down that side. So I think in that instance, he's going to play Kyle Walker. So this is what I'm on about. Actions have consequences. Then where is Bernardo? Exactly. I mean, there's only so many ways to build a team when you've got world-class players. So this is why the Foden discourse is really interesting. And I've not even mentioned the possibility yet of this. KDB being on the bench. Which is wild to say out loud, but it could happen. We could have KDB on the bench, and we could see this, Jacko Doko over here. We could see Foden there, and we could see Rodri, Gundo, or Silva, and we could see this, where KDB gets rested. That, to me, feels wild, but it also could be realistic, we could be seeing that. And I don't see he's going to do that very often. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how they fit it. It's just a quick video talking about this. I don't think it's a given. I think he's going to walk. I don't think it's a given that he's going to play central. I think he's going to come back into the team. He's too good not to. He's PFA player of the year. He's a genius. He's brilliant. I love him. But Phil Foden's return, and Rodri'S to a certain extent, does create dynamic issues. Not issues. Changes. So it's changes. And the strength in depth is great. But what I'm going to say is I don't think we have a strongest 11 this season. I really don't. And we never usually do. But I do feel that right now we've got a lineup that is dynamic, it's versatile, it's fluid. But when you bring these players back in, we probably get better, but we probably get less dynamic. It all changes. And I'm very fascinated to see how it goes. Guys, it was just a quick video talking about this. I'm going to sort of do more of these videos during this international break about these little talking points and so on. And as Hyperholic just said in the chat, thank you so much, mate. We also have Bob as well. There we go. Fill up false 9, but then you drop in Haaland. And who's dropping Haaland, mate? It's complicated, isn't it? And obviously, all that furore yesterday, and this is all I meant, man. Some people are just passionate about football. When everyone wanted to pile in on me on Twitter yesterday, I just wanted to talk about it because I find it interesting. And Phil is a genius. So is Rodri. But guess who else is a genius? KDB. Guess who else is a genius? Bernardo Silva. Guess who else is a genius? Gundogan. It ain't easy, but it's a good problem to have. Guys, let me know in the comments. I will be reading all the comments. Your solution to this. I think it's a really interesting chat. I think it is. I think City are in a great position right now. But I do think the football that we're currently playing is going to be different 2 months from now. Because inevitability of these changes means that. Guys, thanks very much for watching. Let me know in the comments your ideal City 11. How is it going to change? How do we fit everyone in? And who drops out? Like, subscribe in a bit. Bye-bye.